Welcome to the Nick Halaris Show. This is the place where we explore big ideas with people having a big impact on our world. I'm your host, Nick Halaris, serial entrepreneur, author, early morning riser, and seeker of truth and wisdom. Join me as we explore the journeys and discoveries of fascinating people who are literally unlocking the secrets to creating a life of both success and fulfillment. Each episode will arm you with insights, ideas, and practical perspectives on what it takes not only to be financially and personally successful, but also how to start having authentic impact on the world around you. Okay, so welcome back everybody to the Nick Halaris Show. We have another special episode. We're bringing back, I think we've recorded something like 12 episodes and we've released 8 just to give people a sense of kind of where we are in this. And we got good feedback on the first Ask Me Anything episode with John as a guest host.
We're back.
And we're back.
We're back.
And we're bringing in Ellie Konsker.
Oh, yes.
Who is,
yes.
a producer, really is a producer of this show.
It feels weird being on this side.
Yeah.
Versus that couch over there.
We're normally waving to her over there, but now she's here.
Yeah, and she sends me notes and questions, and she does a lot of
sign language
from
a
lot of the work.
know.
Yeah.
Kill that.
Don't say
Do
that.
not say that.
Yeah.
Don't get us canceled.
Yes. So thanks for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Thanks for having us. I'm going to turn it over right back to you guys because you guys, what is it, like 9 o'clock, 9:30?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just waking up, I'm having my coffee and whatnot. But you guys are coming from the gym doing this whole CrossFit cult thing that I like to say. So what was the workout of the day?
Ellie, you want to describe it?
Honestly, it was this huge chunk of one set of a workout. So it was pull-ups, it was box jump overs. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Which you essentially just jump on the box and then step off of it and then jump on the box and step off of it. Then we had, at first we had an 1,000-meter run. Then you go into 25, what was the first?
Power cleans. 25 power cleans. Yep.
25 power cleans, 25 jump overs, 25 pull-ups. Then you do 50 wall balls. Then you do 25 pull-ups, 25 jump overs, and then 25 pull-ups.
Power cleans. You finished with power cleans.
How long was this? Like, how long do you guys have to do this?
So it took me 24
Gymnastics.
minutes. Yeah.
It took me way longer.
Took you longer than 24?
It took me 35 minutes.
Oh, really?
Or sorry, 28
25
minutes.
28.
Yeah.
She was competing against Alicia, my wife, and got smoked.
But recently,
He had to say that.
recently I've had a whole different mindset towards CrossFit because I used to really push myself.
I love
and
it.
used to do the most weight ever. But then I started to feel it in my knees, in my elbows. Like my elbow started to hurt one day and I was like, I need to focus on my body, focus on my form. And so now I'm starting to use a little less weight and focus on my form.
Be more chill with it.
Yeah.
That's the downside to these kind of workouts because you get competitive and sometimes you like do more than your body can really handle.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you have compromised form or you have a lot of times, like for men in particular, they have compromised mobility. That's what causes most of the injuries in CrossFit that you hear about. So if you look up CrossFit online, you hear a lot of negativity. It's mostly caused because people they don't have appropriate flexibility and mobility to do the types of exercises.
All I know is that the one class I went with you some years back, 50 wall balls was the assignment, and most people were doing 40. So the real problem was cheating and optimizing for the time.
That happens.
And like, I did it in 24 minutes. And it's like, well, did you actually complete it?
Ooh, that's interesting. We don't have a lot of cheaters, I don't think.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There are some though.
In Florida, when I'm
some.
back at home in Florida, there are a ton of cheaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you identify them because like their physique doesn't match their time at all?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like my brother we work out together when we're at home, and he is the sickest athlete ever. Like actually excels in anything he does. And let's just say like a 50-year-old who has a little bit of a belly will finish before my brother, and it just won't add up. And we'll see him like finish a particular workout really quickly, and it won't really make sense. So yeah, it's interesting. Why do you think people do that?
I think it's honestly a combination of some people actually just can't count. Like you're doing 50
No
burpees and
way.
they're just so space cadet. You know
Right.
what I'm talking about. Like there's
Yeah, but
there's
you
a lot
don't
of
mess up
people.
like 10 reps. You'll mess up like 2.
Yeah, that's
know?
probably true.
Yeah.
So there's the can't count phenomenon, and then there are people who are just so competitive that they can't help themselves.
Right.
So they're like, well, no one's watching, so I'm gonna just.
But
Right.
you guys do not cheat. You guys are in for the purity, sanctity of
No.
sport.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm sure I mess up counting in my head.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Ellie and I have like a real discipline. Unlike
You weigh more than me.
Yeah.
Nick wakes up at like 4 in the morning.
I mean,
Yeah.
what time did you get up this morning?
This morning was weird, actually. I woke up at like 1:45 and I literally couldn't go back to sleep.
Is that waking up or is it like, I woke up at 2 with like,
Yeah.
I had a weird dream or I was thirsty or something like that. But is that like you're just up in the morning? Like
I couldn't fall back. I tried to go back to sleep because even for me, 1:45 is a little too early. And I just laid there until like 3:15.
And then what do you do?
I just start working, start reading,
At
writing.
1:45?
No, I laid in bed for like an hour and a half.
2:45?
It's still dark outside.
It's still dark, yeah.
What time do you go to bed?
Early. Like
5.
last night I went to bed at like 7.
Oh my
That's
God.
but I was tired.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So how many hours of sleep do you think you get on average?
I got one of those because I got an Apple Watch and so I
Okay.
have a sleep tracker. I don't get very much. I get probably 6.5 hours average.
okay.
What about you?
I'm probably like I'm in bed at like, call it 11. I might fall asleep at like midnight. And then, I'm up at like 7:30, something
Okay.
like that. Yeah, I need like, if I don't get good sleep, this machine is not running.
My friends tell me
forgetting
that all the
things.
time. They're like, I
My-
need at least 8 hours
Yeah.
of sleep.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you don't.
Oh, wait. Oh, really?
Yeah.
What are you at?
I usually get like 7 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Or sometimes maybe 6.5. But I don't really believe that you need 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I think I do think there's variability to it, but
I mean, like
6 to
my
8,
skin
let's
gets
say.
all weird. The whole apparatus doesn't function. I start forgetting names. I'm like, oh, what's your name again? Yeah, what's it? No, I need sleep. I need to like
Really?
center. It doesn't
But
work
you get
out.
7 or 7.5 hours.
Yeah, on a 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't always like this. I think when I was younger, college and law school and all that good stuff, I was like, sleep's the cousin of death. I'll do 4 hours and stuff like that. And it just, now I'm like, that's more important than anything
Right.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Nick. I wanted to take a quick break from the episode to share some exciting news. In addition to the podcast, I want to make you aware of some additional content we're putting out. And best of all, it's 100% free. Our Profit Plus newsletter consists of weekly insights about what it takes to find meaning in the pursuit of modern success. This is the place where we explore big ideas at the intersection of markets, business, politics, and life as we seek to empower our readers to have an authentic impact on the world. If you're serious about finding fulfillment amid success, then definitely check out these additional insights. Just go to subscribe.nickhalaris.com. Again, that's subscribe.nickhalaris.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
Okay. Question for you guys. So what's today? Wednesday? I think Monday, that Apple headset came out and they look like ski goggles. They actually look kind of slick, to be
They
quite
do,
honest.
like-
Are you guys buying it or what?
I will not be investing in those. I think there's a really niche market, like people who
Yep.
invest heavily in tech, which is not me. Like I will get the new iPhone, but that's as far as I'm going, or like the new headsets.
Yeah.
But I would never invest in something like that.
Yeah.
What about at half the price? So let's say
How much are they?
it's $3,500,
Whew.
right? Let's say they had a model in around Christmas time for $1,900, so
No.
$2,000. No,
No.
you're not doing it.
No.
All right, what
Never.
do you got, Nick?
I don't think I'm investing in this, but I think it's interesting. Like the way Apple's pitching it, they're calling it, instead of focusing it on like metaverse or AR, VR,
Yep.
they're talking about it in terms of spatial computing. And so where my head goes is like, remember that movie Minority Report?
Yep.
Where they're like moving screens around with their
Yes.
hands. Like that's probably what they're working on. And that is a valid technology. There's actually a friend of ours at the gym who works for Apple.
Okay.
And I was talking to her about this just yesterday morning. And she said that she tried an early version of the product. She works for Apple TV.
So she tried it.
She's on the entertainment side. And she said that the idea behind it was that you would essentially do all of your work with this thing on. And now Apple is trying to, convince the creatives community to like try it.
Yeah.
The movie makers, the newsletter writers, graphic designers. And then they're creating a bunch of experiences as well. So AR, VR gaming type experiences and movies and TV to try to make it also an entertainment device. So they're playing around with it from those two angles. And it's probably a good idea. It's probably way too early.
Yeah.
But it's probably almost certainly where the computing is going.
You think it says something about the economy that like the first release since 2016, maybe they were the AirPods, the first like major hardware release, and it's like $1 jillion. Like, does it say something about where we are? Like, this is super luxury good, and they're like, screw it. Because honestly, they probably could have charged. I mean, it's a luxury good. They could have gone up to $4,000, $5,000, and I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't impact demand for the people that are going to buy it anyway. I don't know. Do you guys think it says something about where we are in this economy? Kind of weird.
I do. I think it's a good point. I think there's been a lot of criticism if you sort of read the venture capitalist oriented newsletters. There's been criticisms for over a decade about the pace of technology and how it's really slowed down. And even this sort of the last generation of super successful startups is all, getting crushed, right? Ubers of the world, the WeWorks, like, were they really innovative?
Yeah.
That was the question.
Right.
And the answer is probably not. And Apple is, has a tremendous history of producing incredible products, but they've seemed to have lost momentum. And there's probably, who knows why that's happening. And maybe it's just a function of we need AI to advance and we need semiconductors to get even better, which they seem to be. But there does seem to be like a deceleration in the technology.
One of the things that's fascinating about what I saw about it, which isn't so much, but Apple always does such a really good job of integrating all their stuff, like their iOS. I saw they had like you got to wear the AirPods, so it's not like it has a separate ear device. And then like it works well with your Mac. So it like kind of fuses everything together. And instead of like those dorky, joystick things that maybe the Oculus things have, which I haven't played with, you're using like finger controls. So Apple's always so slick with that kind of stuff. They really do hardware well. I feel bad for like the Google Glass folks, and Snap had their spectacles or whatever. So I feel bad for all those guys, and we'll see what happens. I think the future's bright. And then lastly, like it was interesting how, all this AI hype, and then Apple's like, we got some hardware for you guys. It's gonna be fascinating.
That is interesting. Yeah, I feel like Apple is a company, unlike most technology or product companies in the world, they have the inverse quality problem. And what I mean by that is like my MacBook Air is from 2018.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. I don't need a new one.
That's right.
And it's great that Apple can produce products like that, but it's sort of antithetical to modern business, which is oriented around planned obsolescence.
That's right.
That's why like our cars are garbage.
That's right.
And Apple is getting to the point where they're going to be able to they've already created products that can last for like 10, 15 years, maybe more. And so, eventually we're going to have to maybe rethink business because technology is going to come to the point where they produce a phenomenal phone that doesn't die down and you just keep it forever. And so people's revenue is going to have to come.
I'm trying to hold strong with this 11 Pro, but the battery gets shorter.
That's the issue. Like they fix the batteries though. If they fix that phone is totally legit.
From a practical standpoint though, like having those headsets on all day, I even experience this now when I'm looking at my computer all day long. Like I started developing like an eye twitch.
Oh no.
Actually from staring at my screen all day. I would never want to have those headsets on all day. Because I mean,
can't be
even
good. It's like blue light or whatever.
Yeah.
It can't be good. I don't know.
I mean, you're supposed to, every 30 minutes you're staring at a screen, you're supposed to look off the screen for 30 seconds. But if it's just on you the whole day, I feel like that definitely
it's a problem.
Yeah, there's going to be some kind of issue with that.
Yeah. That's what they said for the AirPods. Like you're just supposed to keep them in your ear and like commands and whatever all day. And that's the the logic behind the transparent mode versus the noise cancellation and stuff like that. But man, after like an hour of those things in my ear, I'm like, get out.
Yeah, and then there's always that weird guy at the party who who has it.
Who walks
Using his
around
own
with it.
tunes.
And by the way, it's always a guy.
Always.
Women never
What-
walk.
you guys are good. You guys
That is
aren't wired
so
like that.
So you like, I go to a lot of these kid parties, and invariably there'll be at least one person. You're like, do I talk to this? Are they on the phone? Are they listening to a podcast?
He could be in transparent mode,
No.
so he's
You don't
expecting you to.
Yeah, you don't know. You don't.
That is so interesting. Do you think he thinks like he looks cool wearing it, and that's
don't.
why?
I don't.
Or do you think he's actually in use of?
It's unknown to me. It's a very good question. It's really strange. But actually, this happened. John and I used to joke about it. We had some friends who would like, remember when Bluetooth had those ear things that did like the blue flashing light?
Actually, do you
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah, I
the
do,
Bluetooth
I do.
devices on the ear?
Like when you're pairing it?
It would like always be flashing.
Yeah, it just flashes to like say, "Hey."
Then
I'm
no.
on.
Yeah. Well, people would wear that to the club.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, what are you
No.
doing? It looks really dumb.
Because they didn't like the music, so they were
No, they
playing-
just thought it looked cool.
Okay.
It was
very
it was the
bizarre.
old school AirPod in the club.
Yeah.
I kind of look cool with this thing
That
on.
is so bizarre. Wow.
Yeah.
This was in like your law school era?
Probably just after, yeah.
I'm good. Yes, just after.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This episode of the Nick Halaris Show is brought to you by Metros Capital. If you're an investor looking for direct access to real estate investments, then we'd love to talk with you. Investment opportunities at Metros Capital balance financial returns and community impact. To learn more, contact us at metros.nickhalaris.com. Again, that's metros.nickhalaris.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
Okay, Nick, finance guy, you're watching markets. Another thing that's getting super, a lot of salience right now, Nvidia. What's the issue? As GPT-4 and future renditions of AI come out, you're going to need different types of computing power. And NVIDIA is invariably ahead of the curve with the ability to provide that cloud computing power. I believe that is my high-level version of that. But anyway, their valuation is going nuts. $1 trillion company. What do you got? Is there some staying power? I know that this is not a classic like X times earnings type of deal, and more of like a hype kind of deal in terms of how the market's pricing it. But what do you got? Fascinating, not fascinating, bubble, not bubble. What do you got?
It was almost certainly an overreaction.
Yeah.
NVIDIA does have a really interesting competitive advantage because these large language models, which all of the iterations of AI are based upon, require these GPU semiconductors, which I have no idea what that means.
I was
know,
just going to ask you,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
I just know that NVIDIA is like the only one who makes
Yep.
them.
Okay.
And that's
Right.
why they've gone so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you think it'll inevitably level out?
The semiconductor business is a bad business.
Go on.
It's highly competitive.
Yeah.
Margins are slim.
Yep.
It's essentially like a component of a machine.
Sure.
So it's not really a good business. So unlike Apple, which has a crazy market valuation, but they have a brand and they have an operating margin where they could defend. All it takes is the next semiconductor company to come in and produce a GPU unit for the same price or cheaper, and NVIDIA will get crushed.
When
So
you say it's a bad business, I think about an Intel that's been around for whatever. And they have their lock-in and their contracts and supply chains and all that good stuff. Would they agree that it's, I don't know, would other people agree with your assessment of bad business? Like, what do you mean by that?
it's an arms race.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's a low margin arms race. So
Gotcha.
Intel has done great. It's survived. It's a phenomenal success story. But
Sure.
the minute they don't innovate the next best chip, they're gone. It's
Yeah.
over. And so
Yeah.
other companies, like even Apple, is experimenting, designing and manufacturing their own chips
Right.
to reduce their reliance on other companies and other suppliers and stuff. So it's not like the worst business in the world, but it is a very challenging market
Sure.
and one that tech investors really struggle to make money in
Yeah.
over
So that specific chip tech is not patented by any means for that company.
I'm sure the GPU, NVIDIA's chips are absolutely patented.
But someone can just come out with
They could make
some-
another one,
right.
yeah. The way
That has a slightly different
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
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 One of my favorite podcast episodes, and I love them all, by the way, but and I guess maybe this one's fresh, was your recent one with John Berg. Very, very interesting guy. But and maybe we'll go back to some of his points and your points of discussion throughout our discussion here. But did you guys talk either offline or online or just through your hanging out with him about innovation in the film space, right? So now you're seeing this immersion with like Web3 and, you know, gaming and all these immersive environments and the Apple, you know, do you guys talk about that stuff? And what does he say? Is it an existential threat or not, or what?
We definitely talk about it because he didn't mention this in the episode, but John is producing the Minecraft movie.
Okay.
So he got the script, and Stampede
Yeah.
Ventures and his company is producing it.
Theo and Ben are gonna freak out.
They're gonna go crazy.
Oh my gosh, they're obsessed with Minecraft.
Yeah, we gotta go to the premiere for sure.
Oh
yeah.
wow, that's insane. Okay, keep going.
And John has kids, so he knows like his older kids played Minecraft, and so he understands how powerful these games are. And,
Yeah.
we talk a lot about. We haven't talked about like Web3, but we certainly talked about the relationship between
gaming
and movies. And John, he talked about it on the episode, but we talk frequently about how the emergence of these tech companies in Hollywood has like changed things.
Yeah.
And he talked about this 2014 inflection point in
Yes,
our
I remember
interview.
that.
Like the game is up. Like the studio system is dead, and now we're in something else.
Yeah.
And the pressures are different, and the financial incentives are different, and it's going to upend Hollywood. Essentially, is what John thinks.
Interesting. Yeah. The more I pay attention to that angle of like Web3, and I mean, you know, the most tangible thing I keep thinking about is like Fortnite, right? And like what they're injecting in there, tangible, whatever, from my viewpoint. But it's fascinating. I wonder whether some of the upending is going to come from that gaming angle, which I'm not really so immersed in. But the more I learn, the more I start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, that seems like it's either a threat or something that, you know, the studios are working harder to incorporate into the game.
Yeah, it's like I don't know about Web3. Web3 is really stalled out.
Yeah.
And for good reason, maybe. You know, the technology's not there. There's been a bunch of grifters and fraudsters. But certainly gaming and Hollywood are going to have a symbiotic relationship. Movies are going to turn into games, and games are going to turn into movies. It's already happening, and it's an important like revenue stream for the
one interesting thing, and it's fascinating because I don't know if this is like a technologically driven thing, but with Web3, what it's done in some way is that it's helped promote community and just kind of, I don't know whether it's, for lack of a better word, brand loyalty or just some sort of cohesion towards the product with the game or the film or whatever. And so, you know, from my understanding is like that's one of the biggest value drivers of the Web3 space is like, can you sell some sort of, you know, digital good to make someone super excited about your film offering or your, you know, TV offering and create this like really tight community that's like, oh my God, it's going to increase in value or whatever the case may be. But yes, and I agree, like the tech piece of it is something that I don't know if it's there the way the hype wants it to be.
Yeah, for sure. But I do see your point. It's a good point about the digital goods because back in the day, like, Ellie, this is gonna, you know, you don't know this because you were like maybe not even born when this happened. But we used to buy DVDs.
I remember that.
And then
you remember those days?
Yeah,
Okay.
I used to go to Blockbuster.
Okay,
So
so
Blockbuster.
But it wasn't around for very long for me. Yeah.
But in addition to that, like if you really liked a movie, you might buy a T-shirt
Yep.
or a baseball hat or something. There was a
Right.
way in which you could engage in content
Yep.
that wasn't just on your computer.
Right.
And it formed a part of, especially when you were younger, like your favorite movies were part of your identity.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And now it's probably going to manifest. I think you're right. Probably manifest digitally. It'll be
Right.
on your Facebook. Well, nobody likes
No
Facebook.
one's doing that.
Instagram.
Because now with streaming, you don't get that kind of sense of community in any kind of way. But I'm interested to see, because in the episode, John mentions that he feels like soon streaming platforms, like it will all just be on one versus needing a Disney Plus account, a Hulu account, a Max account, etc. And I'll be interested to see if that actually happens. And I'm wondering if you guys think something like that is going to occur. Because it's interesting because we literally had cable and then we split all of these different shows and movies up. And then it's like now we're going to go back to some kind of business model like cable.
We're going to go right back to I think he's right. And I hope so because it's annoying to have all these passwords and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It is so annoying.
His idea to cancel, like, on a monthly basis, on an a la carte basis.
Right.
I mean, I was like, oh my God.
Why haven't I been
Why
doing
haven't I
this?
been doing that?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
this network hasn't had something good in a while. I'll come
Yeah.
back to it when it does.
Right.
So you binge on
Yeah.
a show, and it's a good idea.
And now
Financially.
since Netflix is like, I share Netflix with my boyfriend. I just use his account.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing for the past 5 years. And then Netflix just came out and said that there only needs to be one household, and whoever else is signed on, and we'll just log them off. So then the other day, Christian was like, "Can you log out of my Netflix account?" And I was like, "No, this era is coming to an end." But yeah.
Do you mess with all his preferences, like all the
He doesn't watch Netflix that often because he's in med school.
Got it.
So I just took it over pretty much.
So it's feeding the recommendation engine's feeding you all of your.
And my family has one. It was just easier to use his instead of my mom. Definitely lost all of our passwords.
That's the problem with all these. Yeah, I hope he's right about that because it's very annoying to have all these.
I hope he's right about that.
I mean, one of the challenges, my streaming use case now is primarily sports. So, okay, so let's look at the NBA playoffs. You got to have TNT somehow. I don't even know how. Like, you got to have the cable piece, which then begets the TNT piece because that's like the hub. So you still got to have that with iRoll. Then you got to have ESPN. So those are the two weapons of choice for if you want to see NBA, or you're going to a sports bar and you're paying, the VIG to go hang out and watch the game in there. So, and then, all right, let's talk about soccer. So if you like things Premier League, you got to have Peacock.
Peacock.
Right? And then, or you got to have, what is it? You can have ESPN Plus for some of the cup championships. Then you got to have USA.
Wow.
What a mess. So sports, I think, makes you get a lot of them. And then let's not even talk about if you like the Spanish league or the other leagues, like there's other, and then, I got to watch Succession. So I got my HBO. So long story short, like there's just, I think sports make it really difficult for you to like cancel one for the month. And you just got to have a bunch of networks to watch sports. I think the sports bundle would be interesting. Yeah.
I just thought all sports were on ESPN.
That's right.
And then I was on the flight from Boston to LA, and I wanted to watch the game because my sister's friends play on the Heat. And so I was going to watch. And
who do we root for? Do we know who this? Can we disclose who this?
Gabe Vincent is.
Gabe Nnamdi Vincent.
Yeah.
Nigerian man.
Yeah. And so I was looking on the channels, and I was like, oh, obviously I'm going to go to ESPN, and then it wasn't on.
Right.
And I had no idea what to do. So I asked the flight attendant, and she was like, oh, I think it's on like TNT. I've also never heard of TNT. So I ended up going there, and then
never in life.
Yeah, I've never heard of TNT ever. I don't watch sports at all.
Got it.
I kind of resent my dad because I don't know anything. If I were to put on a football game, I wouldn't know what's going on. Yeah. Basketball, I know.
Have you heard of TBS?
No.
Really?
Mm-mm.
What an interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what TBS is. What does that stand for?
Turner Broadcast Station.
Okay.
Yeah. There were all those, like, it's so funny because growing up, what else did we do? We had cable, and so I had no choice but to learn about TNT, TBS, and I guess CNN, like all of Ted Turner's like media empire, and that was all we had to do. We had no phones.
That's true.
This was before DVDs.
Yeah, no computers really.
No computers, yeah.
They were pretty rudimentary. You could play games on them, but
yeah.
So the sports thing is interesting. That one of my son's friends' mom is a total like big shot in the industry, in the sports industry.
Okay.
And works for UTA. We were talking at the baseball game on Saturday about sports because she has like a really cool history of being like the head of the XFL.
Oh, really?
She's part owner
that
of
is cool.
She's part owner of the LA women's soccer.
Yep.
Like just like plugged in. And
nice.
She said sports has done great coming out of COVID. But this TV and media thing is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of them that are coming due for renegotiation. And the question is are they going to get, even though sports team valuations are going through the roof, are these organizations going to get the same kind of contracts as they used to? Because if you look, like John Berg was saying in his episode, if you look at the financials of these companies who could pay for a streaming right for the NBA, they're getting smoked.
Right.
They're losing billions. So it's a big risk actually to to the leagues right now.
Yeah.
That these are coming due.
And, one quick comment on that. You're seeing all these really interesting, media's getting disrupted too, as they say, like because of this, creator movement. All the athletes are now creators, right? So like Draymond Green plays a game and then he's going to do his little press conference and then he's going to go to his hotel room and jump on his own podcast and give his insights of it. I mean, yesterday they were talking about Trae Young's podcast that he co-hosts with his like childhood best friend or whatever. And so I remember back in the day, like ESPN, the flagship show was SportsCenter. And that was like the only place for me to get like any type of insights and analysis. And now I don't even watch SportsCenter. I don't even remember the last time I checked it out. I can check out highlights on Twitter. There's other avenues for that. Maybe go on YouTube even. And you can get the insights from wherever favorite player you want. And so if the network doesn't have the content of the actual game, I don't know that I have any use for them at all. Because, so much disintermediation. So it's going to be an interesting time to see what happens next.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of good podcast episodes, so again, love them all. One that struck me was Patrick Dykstra. One, because I've met him before many times, and he's actually, I can substantiate that he's a great, great dude and a hilarious guy. It's funny to see him so serious and polished, but that actually is his true self. But he had some interesting tidbits in the episode that I wanted your take on, Nick. One of the things he mentioned was that he, and that I respected a lot was he was very focused about his plan to, get off of the hamster wheel, the corporate hamster wheel, so to speak. And in doing that, he was very disciplined with his finances and his money along the way. And so while he was here in LA and you guys lived together, he had a very interesting vehicle, 93 Chevrolet of some variety. And he made a comment about how you wouldn't get in the car at certain times. And this was before Uber, so very bold of you. Now you can just say, I'll take Uber, or whatever. But you wouldn't jump in the 93 car. And I want to know if you had any more insights on that. Because I remember you telling me that you had an interesting car of that nature, one of your first vehicles back in Detroit.
Yeah, I had an equally bad car, but I got rid of it. Yeah. So mine was like a 1993 Ford Tempo, and it was like fire engine red. It was an interesting car.
What was a Tempo? Was it 2-door?
No, it was 4-door, but it was a small sedan car.
A red car is very unlike you.
Yeah.
To have.
Right? You were figuring it all out back then. That
And
might have been you. I don't know.
And I used to drive around
Unless
like
it's
blaring my
Rebecca.
music, acting like I was tough.
Did you have you didn't have set store-bought speakers in the back?
No,
you were doing.
I wasn't that guy. I had some friends who did that, but I did not do it. Yeah.
So you had a Tempo, and so then when you and Dykstra were in your early 20s figuring things out here, you were like, I'm done with that. I did that before.
Well, what's funny about that comment is it's completely false. When I lived with
Set
him,
the record straight.
Yeah, when I lived with Dykstra, I didn't have a car at all.
Okay.
I was a consultant at the time, and so I would rent cars if I needed them because I was just gone during the week. And so I was driving like equally bad cars that I was getting off the Avis lot. Maybe they were slightly better than Dykstra's cars, but there was like, every once in a while they'd hand me a Mustang.
Right.
And he would make fun of that too because I would pull up from the airport in my Mustang. But what's funny about that comment in the episode is that like the next day his mom sent me a message on Facebook about that car and about how she remembers, Dykstra telling her that people were making fun of her. It was a sweet message. And, she was really complimentary of the episode and obviously her son.
That's so funny.
It was cool. But the other thing about that episode too that I think is worth bringing up now is that, number one, that was the most mature conversation that Pat Dykstra and I have ever had in our life.
But you prefaced the episode being like, wait until he says something crazy. He's going to say really crazy things. And then the entire time I'm waiting.
I know.
I mean, he had pretty incredible stories.
He did.
But like they weren't. You preface it in the way that like he would get canceled about something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and he's a super inspiring person. And
Yeah.
we lived together at a time when we were both immature, and we both have a joking personality, and so we didn't talk about anything serious 99% of the time. But the 1% we did, and that let us be friends for 20-something years.
Right.
But the other thing about it is, Dykstra revealed a very small sliver of the stuff that he's been up to.
Yeah.
So, for example,
What else we got?
You know how he talked about how he put this list together when he was talking about his happy minutes philosophy? That list was crazy. Like, I'll give you one crazy example.
Yeah, please.
He, on the list, near the top was he wanted to break into the Great Pyramids thing at night and climb to the top and take a photo of the sunrise on the pyramids.
Oh my God.
He did this and then got arrested on the way down.
No.
And he had all these photos.
In Egypt?
In Egypt. And this was during the War on Terror, like a very risky move.
God.
And he's completely alone?
He's completely alone. He read about it. There was another individual who was blogging about it, and he read about it and saw the photos, and he's like, I got to do it. So he went into Egypt and did it. And he said it was actually a lot harder than he thought because the distance between the sort of levels is as such where you have to kind of jump and do a pull-up.
Oh, no.
So you're doing a pull-up into a dip, and you're going all the way to the top.
And this is at night?
He did it sort of like pre-dawn, and then he took his sunrise. So then he comes down, gets arrested.
So many questions.
And the people who arrested him, the police there, were so afraid that they were going to like get in trouble that they released him rather than book him. And their condition to release him was that they wanted him to delete all the photos.
Okay.
So he does it there. He immediately goes to some tech thing that he finds and gets them all back.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That same day.
Where are these photos now?
I'll ask him. I'll see if he'll share them with us.
Oh my God.
We need those. I need to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's crazy. Another one, just to give you a flavor.
Yeah.
There's a waterfall in Venezuela. I forget the name of the fall. It's one of the top 2 or 3 waterfalls in the world. And he read about this thing where you could go behind it.
Okay.
And he went on a tour with some people, and they were like, under no circumstances are you going behind that waterfall? Because it happens to be very dangerous.
Yeah.
So he ditches the tour and goes and does it, and then gets lost in the jungle because he didn't know which direction they went.
Oh my God.
Because he did this whole thing on his own.
Yeah.
He said he walked around for like 5 or 6 hours before he found them, and he literally could have been in real danger because he's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So that's Dykstra. That's the Happy Minutes vlog.
I remember he was either planning for or he almost did the gorillas in was it Rwanda?
Oh yeah, the great apes. Silverback.
Yeah, Silverback. Yeah. Did he do that?
I'm pretty sure he did. I think he's done expeditions there with clients even.
Okay.
I think that must come as part of his regular thing.
See, like on my bucket list, I don't have anything that's gonna put my life in danger.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I don't know about you guys, but like I don't want to go skydiving.
You don't want to do the wingsuit thing?
No, I don't want to do the wing. I don't want to do the wingsuit thing. Like mine's mostly like traveling.
Sure.
And like a very
you'll see some sights, but you're not you're not climbing behind the waterfall. Yeah.
I'm not trying to risk my life ever. Yeah. Did you guys go skydiving?
I did one time, and I went with Dykstra actually.
Did you wingsuit or just like
it was right when he had the goal to do skydiving and wingsuit, and so we went out to the desert one morning from LA.
Okay.
And we did it together. It was fun.
Cute. Oh.
Yeah, it was cool.
Did you go down together?
No, because we did a tandem.
Tandem with the pro.
Because you have to do a bunch of tandems before they'll let you just go. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ellie. I'm not interested in that. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think it's a great rush. I love that he is. I love that for him. But for me, I'm okay with that.
I'll support from afar.
Another super interesting comment that he made was how it's so interesting because I think this applies to so many other. I mean, he could even maybe say investing. Like he's the first person to go and have one of these adventures in certain places, and then literally like a year later, the droves and the other tourists or even copycats come next. It's so fascinating. Were you on that trip with him to Mexico? Was it Holbox? And like, I don't know, maybe it was Raul. Like the next year was like or 2 years later, like, don't ever go there.
Yeah, I was not on that one,
Okay,
but I saw the footage of it. It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was just those two guys in the water with like hundreds of these whale sharks.
That's crazy.
Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's finding, he's finding like when you're doing this for the first time, you're not looking through like the menu and asking your concierge, hey, I'd like to go on this thing. You're like going to go, maybe with the translator, and you're like, yo, I need to go to see this, and a fisherman's taking you.
Right.
And maybe you have to crash the fisherman's cot for the night before you do it, right? Like, he's raw like that, right?
It's very entrepreneurial what he's doing.
Love it.
He's out in the middle
Love
of
it.
nowhere and going to jurisdictions that most people are kind of afraid of,
Sure.
and he doesn't care. He just,
That's right.
yeah, even for the show, like for Chasing Ocean Giants, which was on Discovery, I think, he went to this remote part of Siberia. Like, very few people in the world have ever been to this place.
Yeah,
it took him he says
really
it took
cold
like
out there.
25 hours of driving
Wow.
on dirt roads to get there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, okay, 75 hours of driving. So that means you got to pay a driver. You got to find a vehicle. You got to find someone who has 25 hours to give you
Yeah.
Right.
to be there.
And
He's
there
not
was
gonna take advantage of you.
yeah, and
Right,
and
that's
there's
right,
like
that's right.
no bathrooms. Like, the people that were filming, it was rough for them. He said, "There's
Oh,
Also,
wow.
no woman could ever do that.
yeah,
Like, you literally have to be a white male to do that. I'm
It's
sorry.
true.
I
No,
hate to say.
it's probably some
So true.
privilege to, like, just be able
Yeah.
to be taken seriously
Yeah.
the whole
Like, that's an incredible experience, but I don't see anyone else being able to do that.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a fair point.
He did mention, though, that now sometimes people can pay him and then he'll take them to see the blue whales. Have you spoken to him about that? Would you ever want to do that?
Yeah, like, we have some plans when my kids are a little bit older.
Yeah.
He has some secret ones that he doesn't have on his website that are
Right.
locations that he's discovered that the hordes and hordes of commercial
Right.
activity haven't discovered that we're gonna do together
I would love to do
Yeah.
that.
Amazing.
Can I come?
for sure.
Okay.
He has one, like, I won't give away where it is. He found this location where you can get in the water with these pods of dolphins and they'll stay with you. So he said literally, like, every direction you look, there's like
dolphin.
hundreds of dolphins
That's
and they're
crazy.
swimming around you. And this is
Are you
phenomenal.
and you have to be you're swimming, like, are you scuba diving? Like, what are we
He
talking
won't
about?
let the client scuba.
Okay.
He scubas,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's actually dangerous because you could get knocked up
Yeah.
and down.
Sure.
And so he just lets his clients go on the surface.
Are you guys scuba trained or whatever?
No.
I am
You are.
with
Okay.
with
That's
Dykstra.
Oh, with
I did.
Dykstra.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm
Not much
What? Nick, I didn't know any of this
You know,
about you. That's
red
amazing.
Car, scuba diver, skydiving.
Yeah.
Who are
This
you?
guy.
Yeah, and I got my Alicia became scuba certified
Oh, I
too.
think I remember you guys talking about
Yeah,
that.
it's
Right.
fun. It's not that interesting. I know some people get into it and that's all they do is go on scuba diving trips. I like the novelty dives. Like, if Dykstra finds something cool, I might be interested in doing
Yeah.
it. But just the standard, like, reef dive is like, how many of those fish can you really see before you're ready to move on? That's where I'm at.
Right.
I have two last Dykstra questions. One, I loved how he encapsulated this by talking about his happiness minutes or minutes of happiness. However, he framed that. I thought that was awesome because we do spend a lot of time in life just wasting our time and not being happy or whatever emotion we want to optimize for. So let's hold that there. Is that something that he's discussed, like, when you guys were hanging out back in the day in LA? And then could you have seen all this for him back then? I mean, he's a corporate lawyer, that was when people were younger doing their corporate thing. And then now he's like, an award-winning, photographer, movie, film guy. Did you see all that happening?
At the time, did he frame it in the way like, oh, I'm becoming a lawyer to make this amount
Right.
of money to do this?
Yeah.
Or did you actually think that he wanted to be a successful lawyer?
No, I knew he didn't want to be a lawyer. That was
Okay.
for sure. So the way it was actually it's an interesting story. So back in our 20s, Dykstra's mindset was focused on the happy minutes. And so he
Okay.
came up with this plan. He was like, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do so that I can spend the maximum amount of my life in the happy minute mode, which
Yeah.
is for him meant searching the world for these animals and doing crazy things like scaling the pyramids. And so he is an incredibly proactive and effective human being. And so he actually pulled that off.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know if this came in the episode. I think it actually came up afterwards in the episode when we were talking after, because he said, oh, I wish I would have said something different about happy minutes. So I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
Because he said that after a while, it didn't take him that long. His list, even though his list was absolutely insane, it only took him a few years to go through his whole list, right? So you have 365 days a year and you have the financial resources.
Right.
You can do all kinds of stuff. And so as he got through that, he realized that there was maybe a slight framing issue with Happy Minutes because just living your life for the sake of pure enjoyment is not really the path to success. There's a part of it that's important, like you should follow your passion. So like what Dykstra had figured out in his 20s was that following your passion is a really good idea. And I think later in life he realized that if you can do that and contribute to the broader world and give yourself, give back in some way, you end up in a happier place.
Yeah.
Right.
So Dykstra's version of Happy Minutes actually changed from a very self-oriented version, which is I want to do these things, to let me do these things and share them with everyone. So he started being a cameraman. He started doing the films.
Cool.
Started leading people on tours. Like he started incorporating other people, and that's where he's at now with Happy Minutes, which is that okay, I'm going to use these things that I love, but I'm going to share them.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is really cool.
And I think it also shifted because at first, when he was doing all of these first, it genuinely made him so happy. But now since he's done everything, what makes him happy is sharing those experiences with other people, which is so special. But I almost feel like this should be taught in school,
Absolutely.
right? Like if I was taught to kind of prioritize my happiness and then like figure things out financially before so that it can lead me to the path of my passions, like that would change my entire mindset growing up.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
well, there's that course, right? Is it Harvard or is a course on happiness that's like one of the most popular courses at this institution. And I'm gonna try to pull it up.
I'm almost certain it's Harvard.
Yeah.
And I have
like
I have
Harvard
the author/teacher on my wish list to bring on the podcast.
That'd be
No
amazing.
way.
Yeah, I forget the individual's name, but it's definitely on my list.
No, Ellie, you bring up a really interesting point because I feel like, there's the other side of that where people are like, well, I'm not supposed to be happy. And life's supposed to be a grind.
Yeah.
And it is all in how things are framed. And then there's the other side of the happiness piece where, it's all super hedonistic, right? So it's like, oh, I can just stay at home and play Minecraft all day and maybe have a couple drinks and smoke.
Right.
And that's it. And there is, I think what I understood and interpreted from Dykstra was like the happiness is some combo of contributing to society and being emotionally fulfilled. Work is innate to the human condition, and also just seeking some sort of bliss for yourself and following your passion. So all those things are combined. But I think sometimes when you hear the word happy, you're like, oh yes, I can screw off all day long and not contribute to society or not care about anybody else.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think what the evolution of Dykstra's thought shows is that happiness is really important to pay attention to because it gives you like clues about what you should do. It's almost like in my view, it's almost like a secret message. So it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with my life? If you're lucky enough to be in that position where you can make that decision, that's not true for like a lot of people in the world.
Sure.
But let's say you are. Paying attention to what makes you happy can lead you in the right direction.
That's right.
Because it'll put you on a path where you can be your best self. You can thrive, so whatever that may be. So like in the case of John Berg, for example, it was making movies. You could tell just from the way he talked about it. And I was imagining like a 20-something-year-old John Berg trying to put the Elf movie together. Like he's loving it. That's what he really liked to do. And that passion enabled him to do things that are uncomfortable, like cold call people and take random meetings and ask people for money and all these things that you like. To pull that off, you got to like really like what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to do those things.
100%.
And that's why I think the first part of Dykstra's story is like a universal truth, which is what makes you happy. You should pay attention to.
As I have followed the podcast series, you've had a good diversity of guests. Diversity in all measures, but I noticed a couple themes. So you had like the civic folks, Ana Guerrero, Miguel Santana, Cynthia Hurd, And then you had kind of the businessy types. Maybe we'll throw Berg in there. Maybe David Raby was there as well. But they were all sorts of commonalities. And I'm wondering what you saw, and maybe it relates directly to what you just said about Dykstra and even Berg. But because right then when you were talking about Berg and the passion leading you to take the cold calls, I was remembering Ana Guerrero and her path to, community organizing and like the passion to do that, and even Miguel Santana. So I don't know what commonalities you saw amongst this great diversity of guests that you've had, but what would you say are a couple of those that you've noted?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's two.
Yeah.
I sort of had this as a hypothesis going into the podcast. And so there was a method to the madness in terms of who I was going to invite. But I think if you think about the pathway to success, there's sort of two paths that I see happening just from the guests that I've talked to and interviewed so far. You have the path of passion, which is like the Dykstra or the Berg path, or the David Raby.
Sure.
David Raby is genuinely interested in business, and that has enabled him to be an incredibly effective leader of his company. And then you have the path of service.
Yes.
And that is the Cynthias and the Annas and the Miguels. And in both cases, there's like a calling. That we don't use that word in our culture that much anymore because it seems too religious. But that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So in the case of the people who follow their passions, like they follow what makes them happy, and then they go and they do that, and then all of a sudden, 20 years later, they're super successful. Yeah. And then the other way in which a human being can be called is if they see some condition in their upbringing that just strikes them, that is unjust or that's not right. And I think we saw that already. We've seen that with Ana and Miguel and Cynthia. And if you respond to that in a way that says, I'm going to do something about it, that can also put you on the same path as the people who are following their sort of genuine interest in what makes them happy. And they don't end up in the same place in life because they're focused on different things, but they end up in the same place when it comes to success. Yeah. These are thriving individuals who are doing what they want to do in life. They're making a difference in the world however they want to. Right. They have agency. They can actually make a difference. And that's what's the commonality that I see so far.
Yeah.
That was perfectly said.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, I took a lot from, your discussion with Miguel and, and some of the passion with understanding. I mean, he gave a great synopsis of the unhoused or homeless, situation here in LA. We went from not caring to actually, oh crap, we got to actually really holistically deal with this. And then, what is actually being done and how difficult it is. I mean, the vignette about the woman in his yard that, trying to actually get her into somewhere, get a roof over her head. But then that's only the first step of the problem, because once you're there, how are you going to get food and so on? And just it really painted this picture of how complex the quote unquote homelessness problem is. And how there's just many layers to it. And that's something that you've seen in your work with the Triple H group and whatnot, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And the Miguel interview I thought was fascinating for a lot of reasons, but what wasn't explicitly stated in that interview is sort of the background. So Miguel is a guy who worked in government his entire career. And he mentioned that a little bit, but he went from sort of being fully immersed into it and emerged sort of late in his career after rising to one of the most powerful positions in the government bureaucracy world that you can get. He was the CAO of the city of Los Angeles. Some consider, actually I had several guests reach out to me after that episode, or several listeners, and said that Miguel Santana is the best CAO, chief administrative officer in LA history.
Word.
Which I thought that was pretty cool.
Nice.
And no offense to the previous or current sitting CAO. But he came to a point as he was CAO and retiring from that position where he was just frustrated by it all, and he realized in some sense that he had contributed to the madness in all these years. And now he's in a position where he's able to step back and like really look at these problems not from the position of a government employee, but
Yeah.
from the position of a civic leader and
Right.
an outsider in a sense, but an outsider who has like tremendous inside information. And he wants to see big changes.
What do you mean? I don't know. Unpack that a little bit more. So he might feel like he contributed to some of the madness, but what could that mean with more specificity there?
Basically the insanity of the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So as he described, for example, what it took to get the woman that fell on his
Yep.
property a place to live, those systems and processes, that's just one example. That the whole government architecture has that built into it. Whether you're applying for a building permit or a zoning change or whatever, like anytime you engage with the government, you're dealing with a situation like that.
Yep.
And I forget the phrase he used, but it's a self-imposed. We're doing this to ourselves. Our processes don't actually have to look like that. We could redesign them and have them look more like an efficient business process rather than just some crazy bureaucratic mess that doesn't even work, doesn't even serve the need that it's attempting to serve. And so Miguel is spending a lot of time now, his free time, whatever he has, when he's not running his nonprofit, focused on that issue.
Yeah.
Are there any easy fixes when it comes to that? Like, for example, make it more like tech focused instead of, I know like for permits and things, like you need to literally print out paper and bring it to the city and it's like a whole thing. Like, are there any solutions that you can think off the top of your head that is just like?
There's a ton of them. There's a ton. Like you literally like LA.
I think it's King H time.
Yeah,
it's King H time.
Yeah.
You should have like a song intro.
Right?
I know. What would be a good song for that? Yeah.
King H.
All right, so
Do you
go
want to
on.
introduce the segment?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Okay. I like this segment too much.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
What would H do if he had all the power, none of the bureaucratic layers, and unfortunately some of the democratic layers, but if he was dictator king to make meaningful changes for some of the things that are, impacting communities and our greater environment, either here in LA or maybe in the world. So I think it's King H time. And Ellie asked that brilliant question about, kind of getting to the city level of some of these bureaucratic measures that get in the way. Like what you said, there's a ton of them, but I don't know. What are the top like 3 maybe?
Yeah, I think just to some context, let's focus just on LA.
Yeah.
There's something like 50,000 employees that work for the city of LA. So 9,000 of them are police. I forget how many are fire. So kind of put those aside. Maybe it's like 25, 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
This is a humongous organization, right? It's a significant employer in the region. And part of the reason why these conversations, like a King H conversation, is dangerous for like a politician to have is that the solutions most certainly involve that number going down by a lot. Okay. So what would happen in the business world to the city of LA if it was like a true for-profit enterprise is that you would hire process consultants, strategy consultants. They come in and say, why are you using that system that was last programmed in 1998 to run your permitting system? And you would go through all of the business processes, from A to Z, and redo the tech, redo the actual, like, okay, why does the paper, they lay out the flow, like why does the paper go from here to here to here to here, and try to tighten it up. And the end result of that, I did this earlier in my career, the end result of that is that a huge chunk of people are going to get fired.
Right.
Because it's waste. There's a bunch of waste in the system.
Is there a way to redirect their jobs?
Possibly, because there's other needs, like homeless outreach, for example. So if you could retrain people to be effective at that, for example, that's a no-brainer. And if you really got creative, you could like employ an army of people to clean up all the streets of LA, like work on that. But that requires a little bit of skills transfer.
Yeah, I was going to say, probably different skills.
If you're like doing paperwork for the building department.
And then all of a sudden you're sweeping up the street. That might be
or doing meaningful, like repairing sidewalks. Like there's a bunch of places where let's say you weren't spending the money on all those employees, you could spend it on things that would actually help the city.
Right. And why isn't it treated more as a business? Like, and what's stopping this from happening?
It's not politically feasible. It's not convenient. No elected official could sit here in the King H position and make that argument.
So you're saying King H, one of the first, you would take a businessy approach to, and and maybe you'd sack some people, right? Like maybe some people might, but essentially, like the name of the game would be trying to create some inefficiencies by doing a comprehensive analysis of everything, and maybe some things might have to go, maybe some people might have to go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not even like a business perspective. It's just like efficiency.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You'd pick the outcomes that you're concerned about. Like, so for example, in our world, in the Metro's capital world, how about we tighten up the turnaround time from the time that somebody submits their plans to the time that they get a permit? You would pick an outcome. You say, okay, instead of a year, let's cut that to 6 months. What do we have to do that? And you'd look at all the processes and you'd axe things. You'd say, okay, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Or we're tightening the timeline up for this.
Right.
You would go through all of them. And there's so many of them that it's kind of a big task. Like you really need a humongous team to do it.
Yeah.
Because the building is just one thing. There's all different ways in which you're engaging. The government is engaging with the economy. Yeah, so it's hard to without having like deep knowledge of how these things are done. Like the housing department in LA is like 8,000 employees.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing. Right? Like I know what the intent of what they're there for, which is to make sure there's no shady landlords and people aren't violating the codes and rent control laws and this and that. But 8,000 people, like, wow.
Wow, I did not know that. That's insane.
Yeah.
That is. You should go in there and ask each one of them what they're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, it would be like that movie Office Space where the consultants come in.
Seen that.
You do here?
Yeah, what would you say you do here?
Right. Wow.
All right, so
interesting topic.
those are two. What's a lob another king age? Like I'm gonna make things, and this is in the name of Miguel. Saying that he's trying to unwind some of the things that maybe he was a party to in his previous capacity. Give me one more.
Yeah, I'll give a more positive one because the last one. I know that it may seem offensive, and I don't mean to I know there's a lot of people, I'm friends with them who work at the city who do good work, and they're not like deliberately trying to be inefficient. It's a product of like 100 years of things just festering and
well, that's why it's such a complex issue.
It's a very
you can't
complex.
Just bring in a consulting agency.
Right.
Yeah, you could. Well, you could actually. Actually, if the mayor,
there are some steps in the right
mayor
direction.
and city council could just do that, but they don't.
That was my question.
Yeah, they could do that for sure. That's another.
Sign us up. Sign us up, us three.
Yeah,
let's go.
But a more positive one. Let's talk about the homelessness. The other thing that I would do, and this would be equally politically unpopular because it would cost a lot of money, is if you want to do the right thing when it comes to homeless, you have to allocate the resources.
Okay.
And we're talking billions of dollars because you're dealing with people who are having a life crisis. And so what you normally do, like medicine, for example, if someone is like dying and gets brought into the emergency room, what do? You have the Hippocratic Oath and you help them. Right. And so the same thing is essentially happening from a sort of less intense moment when it comes to homelessness. And Angelenos have been sort of generous and stepping up to support homeless causes in the state of California as well. But they haven't gone all the way. You got to go all the way. You got to say, you know what? We are going to help every single one of these people, and whatever that means. If they need addiction help, we're going to do it. If they need mental health help, we're going to do it. If they just need some counseling and a place to stay, we're going to do it. But everyone is so afraid of the number. The number's huge. It's $3-4 billion a year.
Yep.
And LA just doesn't have that. They have to tax again. They'd have to tax in a big way to get access to it.
Now, okay, the Triple H and some of these efforts to build super affordable housing or housing for the homeless, that number's crazy too. The budget there is nuts as well, right?
Yeah, but it was bold in a sense. It's $1.2 billion over 10 years.
Oh, over 10 years.
When the true number is, McKinsey did a study that I participated in. McKinsey's estimate is that the actual subsidy needed to fix LA's housing problem is $50 billion.
Got it.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. So there's
that incorporates all and hold that there. That incorporates the housing homeless folks, like the Project Room Key, I believe it's called, like things like that of that nature, as well as just like supply, like increasing supply generally in the city and inventory generally to bring costs down.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like I forget the formula they used, but they were essentially saying, what number would it take to make LA not have an affordability crisis?
Okay.
And so it was a very complex,
Got it.
study,
Yeah.
but it incorporated all those things.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's something interesting happening in state of California. There's a reparations bill
Yeah.
that's being talked about. I don't know where it stands in the legislative process, but the numbers on that are enormous.
Right.
600 billion, something crazy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if they pass it. That's homelessness doesn't need that much.
Right.
You could solve it for a fraction of that. But for some reason, no one wants to talk about that, which I find interesting.
Do you have do you think this reparation bill sees the light of day, or is it getting momentum? What do you guys think? I've heard, like, I read a headline and I'm like, okay, I rolled my eyes. I'm like, because then you got to prove that you have some Cali lineage and so on and so forth, and it'll be a complicated thing. And I can talk more about this, but there's some, I lived in Evanston, Illinois for the past 6 years, and there was some reparation action there, and it started big. But by the time it came down to it, it was very difficult for anyone to take advantage of at all. So do you guys think there's any teeth or legs to the bill that's moving through?
I don't think so. I think the number's just too high, and like you said, how would you go about administering that program in an intelligent way? But my first reaction to it was similar to yours. It's like, okay, this is crazy. Are we really? California can't really afford a $600 billion program, even if they wanted to. Let's say they really wanted to. But I took a step back to think about, okay, what would that do? And there's some actual validity to the idea of reparations. Okay. Because essentially...
Is that controversial? I mean, isn't it like...
I think it's in the vast part of America, that's a controversial statement.
Okay.
Because most people think like, well, what did the living people today have to do with it? Like there's a lot of arguments.
Okay.
But the counter argument that I think is kind of interesting to think about, but I don't think just handing people money is probably the right way to do it. The counter argument is like, what is the systemic consequence of slavery? And it's inequality, wealth inequality.
Sure.
And so yes, giving people money could fix that.
Yeah.
But it's dangerous because where does that money go? Right? So like if the money went into the education of individuals who were affected by this lineage of slavery, okay, that's a good investment. But if it went and just had no restrictions to it, like, is that really the public policy? Are we going to get the public policy outcome we want, which is that there's less inequality?
Right.
So I think you have to be, if you're going to do something like that, you have to be very careful about how you design it so that at the end of the day, you want to move the needle on the inequality thing.
Right.
Because if you don't move that, then what's the point?
That's difficult to measure, though, in the short run. So it's gonna be one of those things that's almost experimental in a way. Like, okay, we're taking a bet that this is one way to go about and attack this, and maybe it's a multi-tier approach. So in Evanston, they attacked housing, and basically the way it manifested in a 5-figure, I don't know whether it's $25,000 or $40,000, I can't remember the number, down payment contribution from came from like Chase or something like that, which. Again, in Miguel's episode, he was talking about the redlining, and so all the banks that were, kind of participating in that, they're like, all right. So this one little town, I will contribute, I think it's $25,000 or $40,000 to down payment assistance. Then you had to do a ton of gymnastics to determine whether your family was actually there in Evanston, impacted by this at the time. And then you also had to it applies to, these homes in Evanston, which doesn't have a lot of supply, that are you probably couldn't afford anyway. So, you're in this, high 6 figures, 7-figure homes in Evanston. And,
so interesting.
then, you're talking about $25,000 and you're like, really, dude? And then, you got to work with Chase, which probably is using it for lead generation for to do the mortgage. And you're like, guys, what did we do here? And but one of the things that is interesting is you got to start with a big number, and then it ultimately gets winnowed down to something. But if you don't start big, people either don't take it seriously, or you don't end up. It's negotiation 101. But I like the concepts of the reparations movement. I think I'm just very doubtful of where we end up. But I'm here to watch. I'm very bullish on it, of course, and see what happens. But
Yeah. The housing that's an interesting one because that one, let's say you could do this effectively. You could identify giving somebody a house that's the way. And do like what Singapore did. Like Singapore
absolutely
did this massive subsidized housing movement where they heavily subsidized, but they put all these restrictions on us so you couldn't sell it. So you could like prevent somebody from just flipping out of that house and going to do something with the money that maybe not is in the best interest of the long term.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so you could do something like that. That'd be interesting.
Or just like investing in the schools in those areas as well.
Yeah.
I feel like that makes sense as well. Housing and I feel like education.
Yeah.
But handing someone this
like, here you go.
Well, there's that Chappelle skit. Have you seen the Chappelle skit?
No.
It's really a classic. Like they announce reparations, and then Chappelle's talking about how like certain brands are now the most valuable companies in the world. Remember, like it was like FUBU and somebody else. It was a great skit.
We got to send you you got to check it out.
That was early. Like you were in high school. When
send that to
me.
Well, there's this California program. I mean, there's a lot more, I think, than this one, but it's like a down payment assistance situation where the state of California kind of co-invests in your down payment, and the program, I think, they allocated X amount of dollars to it statewide, and after, I think in way quicker than anyone thought, the funds were exhausted, and there was like a rush to leverage this program and avail of it, and it went away. I mean, the demand for that kind of thing is crazy, and they have all these interesting ratchets on like how okay, you can't just flip the house afterwards and pocket the cash. Like, I think the state literally stands next to you in the down payment element of it. So I don't know how familiar you are with that.
I've heard about it, but I don't know that much about it. But that's a good program. It's interesting.
So, I mean, and that's, I think a couple issues ago you had, you call it the housing issue, and, trying to, you had a bunch of really interesting thoughts about where we are and how housing is kind of like the issue of our time from an economic standpoint, maybe social standpoint as well. But one of the things that struck me actually was that the tone was very direct and a little bit more aggressive than I think you're super opinionated on it, and you were doing some direct comparisons to some red states or other states, but one read could be of red states, specifically Florida. And so I don't know if you had anything to unpack there with specifically Florida's live of some act that they had there. I don't know if what thoughts you wanted to unpack from that issue.
Yeah, that's the housing question is a fascinating issue because as I wrote in the article, I really believe it's become the meta issue.
Yeah.
Maybe not the only meta issue, but it is a meta issue, meaning what's going on in housing is a manifestation of a whole bunch of other things like wealth inequality and economic segregation and classism and racism. All the stuff that you read about in the news, like ultimately housing is related to it in some way. And the whole country is at risk of looking like California. And so it's not like...
In what? And be specific about that, looking like California, how so?
In the sense that the vast majority of the state is unaffordable for people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's antithetical to the whole concept of America.
Yeah.
America was supposed to be the land of abundance in this area. It was a land of abundance with land. Now, we have to put aside the fact that there was like a genocide associated with the native peoples.
Right.
Putting that aside.
It's not funny, but yes.
It's not funny, but it's...
Yeah.
You have to recognize that because that's what happened.
Right.
But it's still, there was a lot of vacant land. Even with 3 million native peoples living here, there was still a bunch of land, and that's what got America going, was this fascination with land. And we've gotten to this absurd position where even still, America is relatively underpopulated given how big it is. China has like similar landmass and has like 4 times the amount of people that we have.
Right.
Yet we have like one of the most unaffordable housing markets in the world. And we have a kind of a pathetic home ownership rate, like we're in the 60% range.
Yep.
And other places have reached way higher. Places like former communist places like Romania is on the top of the list, or Singapore is on the list, which is a kind of a controlled economy.
Right.
So other places have figured out how to get home ownership.
Yeah.
And I feel like America has to figure this out if it wants to preserve its democracy. That's why it's such a big deal, because there's something, in my view, there's something important about ownership and democracy. And you probably can't sustain what we have here without fixing that. Because what if 80% of America was renters?
Right.
What are the policies that are going to be passed? What does this country look like?
Sure.
It's probably not good.
That's an interesting connection.
Yeah.
I like that. Tying it back to democracy, you got to feel like you have a stake. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. People behave. There's no question. I've seen it. This is kind of a negative point, but I think it's one worth making. I've seen it with this NIMBY movement in California.
Sure.
So what's crazy about the NIMBY movement, and actually Miguel Santana talked about this, and Anna might have too, is you get people who are very left. They're lifelong Democrats. Mm-hmm. They support all of the left policies. The minute they own a home, they will be anti-development in their neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's going to block the sun or whatever the issue is. So there's this like cognitive dissonance, this massive cognitive dissonance, and it's directly related to the fact that they have a home when they didn't, as before when they didn't have a home. So they're pro-development until they have a home, and then they're anti-development, which is kind of crazy.
Well, maybe you guys heard about, my fellow Akronite, Steph and Aisha Curry built this beautiful home in, I think, Atherton. And there's in the Northern Bay Area rather. And they, I don't know, there's a development proposal like that's going to abut their property. And they're like, nah, like it's a dense play. And, I don't know whether it's going to block some sunshine or whether the prospect of having density that close to their, sprawling 30 million estate. And it's interesting because it's cognitive dissonance for sure. Because, look, like they support a ton of causes and, they're, from what we read and see, like their spirit and they're in the right direction in terms of trying to promote the best of society. Right. But, their estate, they do not want it next door. And it's weird. Like I might not either. But then it's on the flip side of it, it's what we need. So it's very fascinating to see that side and to actually see, they're NIMBYs, but they don't. To me, they're not the prototypical. Like when you think of who the NIMBYs are, it's not them who have so many causes and donate tons of cash and are so great for the community in general. So it's fascinating to see.
This is a great example because that's exactly how it manifests.
That's right.
Where all of a sudden, what's good for you personally is in conflict with what's maybe good for the community, and people tend to focus on what's good for them personally.
Yeah,
and that's how you get the NIMBY movement.
Yes,
on fire.
Yeah,
we have a project in Athens, Georgia, where we are in the process of applying for a zone change. So essentially, this zone change would allow our property to go. We're currently zoned for like 350 units, and it would allow it to go to 950.
Oh wow!
So a huge increase.
Yeah, triple.
And we had our planning commission meeting last week.
Okay.
And about a dozen sort of neighbor NIMBYs came out. And it was the exact same meeting that I've seen in LA. There's no difference. This is Georgia. We're talking about Georgia. Now, Athens happens to be kind of a liberal enclave of Georgia.
The university and...
But it's kind of a red state. I guess it's kind of a state that swings. Yeah, swing state. But they made the same arguments, same racist arguments, same classist arguments. And the suggestions, essentially people get up there and they make the suggestion that density leads to traffic and crime. You have to kind of take a step to unpack it and understand why that's classist and racist.
Sure.
But it is. It's 100%.
Yeah.
But it's not just Athens, Georgia. Yeah. It's Atherton, it's LA. Like everyone is essentially making that same argument, and it was interesting. But fortunately, the planning commission voted 5-0 to support our.
Oh, fantastic!
Our zone.
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
We did the right thing. We offered up 15% of the units to affordable housing. Yep. We gave them like what we needed to do.
That's a giant project.
Yeah.
We're never going to build that many units just because
Sure.
of the way it is, but we're going to do some. We're going to add some density to
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah.
Good.
But it's a good example.
Yeah. Talk about that act in Florida that you referenced in the issue.
Okay, so the Live Local Act is an interesting political development.
Yep.
Essentially, if you think about COVID, there's been this massive post-COVID migration to Florida. And this has happened before. Florida is literally like the prototypical boom bust
Yep.
real estate town. People are always
For
kind of
sure.
flocking there. And this goes back to like the 19th century. But it's happening again, and it's happening on fire. And now prices have gone so crazy, not just in Miami, but all over Florida, that people are complaining about affordability issues already. And it's a state that crushes California in terms of production. There's a chart in that article that shows, I think California is averaging something like 2,900 units per every 100,000 people.
Yep.
And Florida's like double that, maybe
That's
even
right.
close to triple it. So they're already producing more housing. But even with that, you throw a bunch of people at a housing market, the prices are going to go up because it takes time for people to build and stuff. So they passed this law, which was pretty aggressive. They're banning rent control. They're taking away local control of zoning from cities to prevent the NIMBY movements from stopping developments. They allocated $1 billion to affordable housing. They gave tax exemptions for certain types of affordable housing, which is really interesting. California should probably consider doing that.
Yeah.
And a couple other things. But they just acted so much faster.
On a state level.
On the state level, yeah. Where California has adopted some of those policies over time, but not all of them. Like, there's still the zoning thing is still a big deal.
Yeah.
By the way, I've seen that directly growing up in Boca Raton, Florida.
Yeah.
We used to drive and there would be no traffic, like literally no one on the road. Now I go home and I'm in standstill traffic.
Ooh.
It's crazy how many people
and you
are
just
moving to
it's
Florida.
noticeable.
Yeah, it's so noticeable. Like growing up, we would go out on this street called the Ave in Delray, and now every time we go out there, there's huge lines down the street waiting to get in all of these different bars. Like, it's crazy how many people are moving to Florida.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, one of the things I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on was the presidential race, which honestly bores me, and it's a reality TV show that I just don't care to tune into. Biden's running again. We know that Trump's running, but he's having some interesting challenges, some hurdles and speed bumps along the way. But you also have on either side of the aisle, you have the introduction of these younger, more dynamic candidates, and arguably more polarizing as well. And so we were just talking about Florida, and Governor Ron D is and he did this novel and innovative way of announcing his candidacy. I'm going to go on a Twitter space, and some are going to say it worked, it was terrible, and others are going to say, wow, it was great. But and then on the Dem side of the aisle, you got RFK Jr., and I don't know a ton about him, but you're talking about the Live Local Act for housing and some of the other things that DeSantis has done to promote, I guess, growth. I was just curious whether there are any prevailing thoughts about, any of these new candidates throwing their hats in the ring. I guess there's Tim Scott and Mike Pence and maybe Chris Christie as well on the Republican side, but just curious to see if there are any thoughts. And it's early, but what do we got?
Yeah, it is early.
I guess it's early, but it's not that early. It's 2024. It's coming up.
It's coming up. Yeah. No, it's true. I feel like for the long-term viability and health of the Republican Party, somebody has to beat Trump.
Yeah.
One of those players has to beat him in the primary.
Right.
It's probably, I think DeSantis has got the best chance of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
His downside probably is that he's been messing around in the culture wars.
Yeah.
And that might not matter for the Republican Party because it's not, but for the national election, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Because he's on the wrong side of the majority on a bunch of those things.
That's right.
I don't know where he stands on abortion. Do either of you?
I'm not familiar. Oh,
yeah.
You said something. It's like the Live Local Act or whatever. It's stripping away local control to promote building for zoning, for example. But then you read some of the quote unquote book banning act, and then some people are gonna say, well, they're not really banning the books; they're just giving power to the localities to choose what their kids can read and listen to. So it's like, I'm like, wait a minute, which side are we doing? But
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a
it just
good
goes
point,
to
yeah.
like the culture war side that he's trying to do, and it is what it is. But I read it and I scoff, but that's me. But go on, yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know what his thought process behind that, because I feel like outside of Florida, I don't know how popular those views really are.
Right.
You know, like what the midterm showed, in my view, is that you basically can't mess around with abortion. The majority is not on the same page as the Supreme Court, and so you can't.
2023.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, like there's a different viewpoint about the women's right to choose, and they're just on the wrong side of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important issue for him, is that he may get branded if he beats Trump, even though he's in many other ways, he's a super compelling candidate. That might hurt him.
What are these ways? Like, I try to be objective, but then I think I get so repulsed by some of the culture stuff, so I can't even get beyond that. But what is the appeal? What, that he's like dynamic and willing to just be more innovative, and he's younger? Like, what do we got?
Yeah, he's pro-business.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think I think he's wrong on the culture wars, and I think he's wrong on immigration.
Sure. Oh yeah, he mailed some? Not mailed. He sent some folks on a plane to Martha's Vineyard and stuff like that. Got it. Yeah.
But the whole Republican Party is probably wrong on those issues. Yeah. There are some like boring candidates who have run before, like Mitt Romney.
Yep.
Mitt Romney probably has a somewhat intelligent perspective about immigration, but from what I've seen from the rest of the high profile people, it's really bad. Really bad. Yeah.
Interesting.
Pence can't, to close the loop on the other people. Pence has a zero chance. Even though he did separate himself from Trump in the last hours of that presidency, he's going to be branded as his whipping boy.
That's right.
He's got no chance. Christie has no chance. He's a savage.
Yeah.
And then on the Dem side, RFK Jr. is an interesting character, but he's too fringe, and he's too focused on like vaccine denial. Like I don't know what he's talking about. Like if that's the foundation of his base, then I have concerns about his viability as a candidate. But what is kind of interesting is that, you know, he has a name. And he's saying some crazy things that are maybe not crazy, about how the CIA killed his father and his uncle, and he probably knows some stuff. I don't know.
Do you believe that?
So I just finished a biography on RFK.
Yeah.
By an author. I think his last name is Graves. Phenomenal book. So the author points out that RFK himself questioned whether the CIA killed his brother. And he was heavily engaged with the CIA at the time. Okay. Because he was kind of running, the book goes in way too much detail about this, but he was running sort of like extra constitutional activity with the CIA. They had an assassination program that they were trying to kill people like Castro, which, by the way, is completely unconstitutional. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional.
Sure.
That's what they were doing.
There's a lot of things.
There is what they were doing in the 60s.
In Langley, and doing now, frankly. I don't think it stopped then.
Yeah, and they paid the mob to try to kill him. Like, they were this wild stuff. Yeah. So RFK was in bed with the CIA,
and wait, and when they say these things in the book, like, is there evidence who wrote this?
Yeah, so it's based on a bunch of interviews and documents that have been released. Yeah.
Wow.
So there are people who are still alive who were there. You know, they're much older now.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a really good book. If that's a period of history,
called?
It's just called RFK.
Okay,
it's a biography. Yeah,
I know we're cutting short on time, but I did want to get the opinion of the group. We talked about this briefly beforehand, but the Saudis are making moves, and they're making moves in sports. And I always think that sports sometimes are, you know, they're pretty telling of like greater views, and maybe people and things try to make moves through sports to kind of, I don't know whether it's indoctrinate or ingratiate. But anyway, the other day, I think it was Monday, the PGA Tour merged with the Live Tour. So that's all the Saudi money is now part of the PGA Tour, which people were had interesting views on. And then, now that European or world soccer is not European, world soccer is now in its transfer season. We're seeing the Saudi leagues promote all and make all these crazy offers to people. They already have Cristiano Ronaldo. There's an insane offer for Messi. There's some other folks, like Karim Benzema and N'Golo Kante, are getting these crazy offers, and so on. And I'm just curious whether that portends anything to their motives or like what's going on here, because it's hard to divorce, what's going on there with just the greater positioning in the world.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Didn't Beyonce do like a show there too?
Or was it in UAE? But I don't know. I don't remember. You're right, though. She did. It was some birthday or something like that.
They
I saw that there was something
an
like
absurd amount of money.
Yeah. Saudis have a massive PR problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to fix it by spending all this money on sports.
You think it's directly related to their PR? How has their PR problem go on? Like, how?
They have several issues.
Okay, go on.
These are big issues too. One is oil.
Okay.
They're OPEC. They just cut another billion barrels or something like no, maybe not 1 million barrels of production, daily production.
There you go.
So they're playing geopolitical games and they're messing with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Not usually a good idea historically.
Okay.
Yeah. So their oil. They have terrible policies with women.
Sure.
It's like backwards, like absolute ridiculous behavior.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Laws and stuff is dumb.
Right.
And they are engaged in crazy extra constitutional activity internationally, like murdering journalists and whatever else is going on. We have evidence of a few of these things, right? So they're not really aligned with America in any way.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the same value system. They don't believe and care about the same things that we care about.
Yeah.
The Saudis have been an ally of convenience for us in the post-World War II era.
Yep.
And you take away oil and under no circumstances is America allied with them.
Yeah.
And so now this move it's smart, this young MBS, it's a smart move because what are they trying to do? They're trying to they're trying to incorporate Western culture by buying it.
There you go.
Which is not a bad idea.
There
like Russian oligarchs were buying these clubs before they got stopped, right?
That's
like,
right.
If you want to get into the West, that's how you do it.
That's right.
You buy these entertainment assets, and sports is a huge one.
Yep.
And the amount of money they're throwing around is so crazy. It's making the leagues look like they don't pay that much, and they're already paying a lot. Right? Like you can make $100 million a year playing for Live or whatever. When you were making $10 million a year for the PGA, it's kind of crazy.
That's right.
Yeah. So money talks, obviously, and it's working. But I think they have so many problems. I'm not sure how far this goes.
What do you think in terms of we'll say quote unquote the other side of the world, Russia, China? Like, do you think that there's some sort of play or some sort of attempt to move away from the quote unquote West? And that's like kind of the bridge or the pathway there. I don't know. Any interesting thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you were Saudi, who would you want? What would you want to do? That's a good question.
Think like Saudi.
Yeah, just think like Saudi. Yeah, if King H was in charge of Saudi.
King H.
My thing though is it's so disheartening that people like Cristiano Ronaldo, because obviously their PR team, his PR team, lays out the pros and cons of making a huge decision like this.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's worth any amount of money, in my personal opinion. But that's also a female perspective, and I've never been offered that amount of money in my life.
Well, you wonder whether his vantage point is different, right? Because he's Portuguese and played all over Europe. I wonder, like, if it's as strong as like our American one.
Oh, that's
I think
interesting.
the gender thing has to be universal.
Right. Didn't they have to make like a special law for his wife?
For his wife, yeah. I mean, that alone.
That alone, you're like, okay, this is probably not the best decision.
Yeah.
That my wife needs her own law to be made in order for her to like live properly.
Right. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre. And he has children too. I don't know. It's
it's kind of crazy. Like, I get what they're doing. I think they're moving the other direction. Actually, to answer your question, I think they're moving this way.
Oh, okay.
Because the problem with having allies like Russia and China is that they're not as reliable as America. America is kind of a shifty player, but not as shifty as some of these other players. Like if you were to choose, if you were a country like Saudi Arabia or any smaller country without a giant military, you'd want America on your side. And so doing this cultural move as an attempt to improve your brand and get closer to the West is pretty smart.
Right.
And those assets, investment-wise, let's put aside all this politics stuff. That's a good play.
Yeah.
Owning these franchises, there's a long history of these franchises going up in value.
Sure.
It's not like they can't go down, they do go down, but it's a great trend. It's like the stock market trend, maybe even better than the stock market. It's just gone up and up and up. So if you have a bunch of excess cash that you want to diversify away from some oil, which is going to be worthless.
That's right.
That's probably a good move.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy some soccer clubs. Some golf clubs, soccer clubs.
Yeah.
Casually.
Yeah.
I wonder what streaming network the Saudi soccer league is going to be on. I have to now pay for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or maybe we will intentionally not support.
Yeah, man, that's right. That's right.
But you have to, I mean,
yeah,
you're a big
for Ellie's
guy.
sake, you should boycott.
I should boycott.
Yeah.
I had a hard time boycotting the NFL when Cap during that moment, but that was like, we can't watch the NFL during the. But I was like, man, I need some football.
Yeah.
I'm the worst.
Yeah.
Activism in sports, it's needed.
Yeah.
I know it's needed, but
yeah, like these guys are heroes. These men and women who play professional sports so what they're doing culturally is important.
Yeah.
And they can make people uncomfortable. Like Kaepernick made a lot of people uncomfortable because they had the exact same internal dialogue, which is that they love football, but maybe what's going on in football is not great.
Right.
Yeah.
For the next episode that we do this, are you going to be in your Apple glasses?
Yeah, I'll make an investment.
That would be so
I'll be spatially
funny.
computing like Minority Report.
Pinching
No, but this was fun. Thank you, Ellie, for your first one. Thank you for being a producer on the show.
Thanks
You've been
for
so
having me.
helpful.
Thanks.
Best producer in the business right now.
I agree. She literally is like, just picked it up.
Yeah.
No training on how to be a producer. And here we are.
All of a sudden, add that to my LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. And
What's in that? What do you got in there?
This is just water.
Oh.
But this is my friend's company. They started in Australia, they started a kids body care company. It's really cool. They make like body care really fun. So they have like waffle sponges with like maple syrup, like body wash.
Okay, that's cool.
They have like 7 stores now in Australia.
Maple syrup, so you can eat it.
You can't eat it. Yeah.
It just smells good.
Yeah, it just smells really good and it's cool. It's like
I
an
thought you
experience.
spiked it. You were pretty lucid with your thoughts today. So
It's a mixed drink.
I thought you poured a little
Tequila soda.
Yeah.
No, this is fully water.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah. Coffee? Water?
Coffee.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
And John, thank you. This was fun, man.
Hey,
Appreciate
man.
your time.
Always a pleasure to be here and get your thoughts on all these burning issues.
Likewise, man.
Yeah, man. And
Great
good
time.
to see all the podcast growth, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
all the
it.
best and to many, many, many more.
I agree. Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
very much. We'll do it again soon. All right.
You know it. Alrighty.
Thank you for listening to the Nick Halaris Show. We hope you enjoyed the episode and would appreciate your help with spreading the word by sharing with your network on social. And until next time, remember, it's not about pursuing success to unlock fulfillment. It's about learning how to find fulfillment in the midst of success.